I'm going to start today with a little story. So I had a friend of mine, and I think in my gig, there's usually two types of people that ask you questions. If you're at a dinner party, one person is if you're a doctor, they come over and ask you about a sore elbow or a growth on their shoulder. And then someone else is about your opinion on property. So I have a couple of people that I know, and one of them was looking at property. We're going to call him Gary. And Gary was always asking me about certain things he should and shouldn't do, hemming and hawing. He'd go to viewings across a plethora of things. It was kind of like a buffet. He would go and look at property that was this size and it was a 3 bed, and then he'd look at another one that was this bed and it was a 4 bed. But to be completely frank, he was wasting his time because he was perpetually waiting on the sidelines. He was waiting for this perfect moment to jump in and get in on the game. Best example would be someone who's playing skipping, like jump rope, and you're standing there waiting for that perfect moment, trying to time it before you know it, the game is over and you've missed out. So what Gary did that was wrong was that he kept perpetually waiting for the perfect time. That doesn't exist. It's just the way it is. Hindsight is always 2020. So my subject for today is going to be on hesitation, waiting on the sidelines, and that kind of procrastination on decision making. Before I get into that, I want to give you a quick insight into me. My name is Andrew Rattigan, and I own Rattigan Real Estate. I started this podcast. It's called Shut the Front Door. A little bit humorous, but I want it to be edgy and educational for people. I'm going to keep it under 10 minutes. And to keep me honest, you will see here, I have a timer ready to go. So, back to Gary. There are 5 things that I could teach him if I sat down for a drink with him before he decided to waste months and months looking at property and never actually taking any decision. So the first one is the market moves faster than you do. So if you're not going to be decisive and you're not going to make that real, specific, tangible agreement with yourself or with your loved one that you're going to decisively move forward with something or move away, the market's just going to keep moving. An interesting fact is that roughly about 5 to 10% of the value is lost when you are indecisive in property, because when you're looking now at this perfect moment and you don't decide, as time moves along in a hot market, you can add 5 to 10% to the original price you might have paid if you'd done so today, then waited for this, quote unquote, perfect time. So if I was speaking with Gary, I'd say, look, Gary, Gaza, big G, um, be a little bit more decisive and remember what the market is doing. It's always moving. Just because you press pause and you hem and haw, the market doesn't look at you and say, well, hold on, Gary's not ready. Let's just slow down. And it's about being in control of what you can control. You cannot control what's happening in the market, but you can control how you conduct yourself. The second thing I would say to Gary is opportunities don't wait. So if you're looking at a property, and let's say you've done your checklist, because when I work with people, I give them a checklist because it keeps them kind of honest with themselves. And it maybe doesn't have 1 or 2 elements that you would have liked to have. Now, it has all that has to have, but let's just say it's got a bit of work to be done in one location or the other. The reality is, if you're waiting for perfection, it's just going to pass you by. And then the next property, the bar would have been set. So when you're pricing a property, the comparable that would have been set would have been the property that sold. The one you hesitated on is the one you lost. So then the next property will have an increased value added to it from the get-go, which means your hesitation cost you potentially 10% if you just played jump rope straight away and got into it. We're not going to dwell on that. The third one I would say is price creeps. So when you're looking at price creeping, it costs you more because you're kind of not aware of why you're making a decision and you think you're saving in the long run. But this indecisiveness, it's like a decision not to do something is still a decision. So inaction is a choice to not take any action, but there are also going to be knock-on effects to that. And when you're looking at the prices increasing, that's a knock-on effect on everything. If you're renting an accommodation, that's another month that's gone by where you haven't taken any action. You have to maybe relate to why you're looking at certain properties if you either aren't willing to take any action or are afraid to take action. And maybe that's a budgetary thing, or it's a conversation you need to have with your lender so you understand the ramifications of getting it at a certain level. So if you have property and you have or if you're searching and you have a budget and it's kind of not sitting with you and you feel like you don't want to push it, maybe that's something you need to address with yourself, your significant other if you're buying with them, or a family member, or your lender. It's like a credit card. It doesn't have to be a target. It could be a limit. But I think that can also have that knock-on effect on people when they're, hemming and hawing as to whether they should jump in, and they're perpetually waiting, just waiting for that perfect moment that, again, does not exist. The fourth thing I would talk about is there's an element of indecision signaling weakness. to those who are selling or those who are representing a seller, such as an agent. And it's not to be negative. We all have these things. So when you meet someone, they say it takes, I think it's 30 seconds for them to essentially judge you based on, say, your handshake, how you hold yourself, and how you speak. When it comes to signaling with agents, agents have to profile you as a buyer. And if you start off and you're a good communicator and you're clear cut as to what you want, that kind of signals to them that this person knows what they want. They're very communicative and they can rely on this dialogue back and forth when bidding starts coming in. But if you hesitate, there's an element of an agent or even a seller, if they were involved in selling it themselves, that's going to look and say, there's something there that they mightn't verbally be able to put their finger on it, but there may be certain subtle cues that you're showing that you really just don't know what you're doing or how you're going to go about it. And if you come up against someone who's more decisive on their budget, they're tangible, what they have to have, they're ready to go, and they really have that clear cut idea in their mind and that roadmap, it's going to make you look like you're just this little underling that doesn't know what they're doing. And they're immediately going to be drawn to the stronger person. And a lot of this can happen where people think that it's not fair. I'm a good person and everything else. It's not really about that. I think there are basic pleasantries when you're looking at property. It's important to be polite. It's important to be on time. It's important to be on time. I'm saying that twice because it's super important. I think I'm just one of those people that values that. And then that leads into the respect element. So when you're looking at that weakness coming across, you want to do away with the stuff you can't control. So, present yourself well. You want to be looking at property. You want to be in such a way of kind of going, right, I know exactly what it is I want. I have a cutoff in my mind. And you then, when you're presenting an offer, you want to be clear cut as to how you're doing it. And equally, when you want to step away, have that point where you pull the bungee and you're jumping out and you get on with it. Don't be afraid. But what you don't want to do is give someone who's trying to meet you, to create some sort of a dialogue to move a sale forward. Don't give them any cause to be concerned about your decisiveness, because if they are concerned about your commitment and how you conduct yourself for your communication, in the Irish market, you don't have anything signed. So basically, this could be a 6 to 12 week process where you still need to be the person that's communicating that you still want the property. You're doing what needs to be done. So it's super important you get rid of that decisiveness. If you're unsure, then you are indecisive because you want to be clear cut as to what you're doing. And that also plays into why you're looking at certain properties. So if something's beyond your comfort zone, it's not that you're striving. I don't mind striving, looking at something that gives you that lift that you want to aspire to have. But if you're going to stuff perpetually and you feel that it's way beyond where you want to be, all you're doing is torturing yourself, and then you're losing confidence in your ability to make an offer when the time actually does come. And the fifth one is the perfect deal doesn't exist. And I think I said it a few times, but I think it reiterates where people have this concept that if they wait and they hold out and they play tough. I mean, look, being an agent, I have seen it all. I have seen really nice people who come in. We had a couple of years ago, super, super nice. And they were really communicative, really open, really everything else. And then they sent a family member in as kind of like the assassins to do the dirty work. And what was fascinating about that was they didn't realize that the communication piece was broken down. So if you're equating it to decisiveness and waiting in the wings, they came forward. They were really, really great at what they were doing. They were very communicative. They were a pleasure to walk around the property. And then as soon as they disconnected, they kind of stood back and stepped back into the bleachers and they let someone else take charge. They didn't realize that signaled indecisiveness, that signaled a sense of weakness. And I understand people need help, but because that person who was stepping in to help them didn't have context on what their role was and what they needed, me subtly, unconsciously, whether I realized it or not, I was thinking, there's a bit of weakness here. There's someone not willing to step forward and take a chance at bat, and they're asking someone else to do it. So when it came to bidding, I'm immediately have them in my mind thinking, okay, they're bidding. Do they really want this house? Where are they at? Do they have it? What's this dynamic at play? And that's not necessarily something you verbalize in the moment, but in retrospect, you look back and you say, wow, this was happening in this corner, and then something happened on this side. And I found it really interesting because they're the little things where people think they're getting help and they think they're doing right. And it just sets them up for failure because it comes across the wrong way. And it's kind of like, not that you want to consider buying a property a fight, but you kind of have to fight your own fights in some ways. And if you have advisors or people helping you, it's important that they understand what it is you want them to do and also the role they're going to play at any given time. But the reality is, as a slight aside, having someone step in and threaten you that, they're going to do X, Y, Z isn't really going to help you anyway, because, an agent is the only person that meets everybody. So they're the ones that have to vouch for the buyer when the seller has an issue and the seller when the buyer has an issue. So if you were to summarize the 5 things that you're looking at when it comes to hesitating, standing in the wings, waiting on the sidelines, I'm going to have a quick glance and see we're just about a minute away. So I'm going to summarize them quickly. It's the market moves faster than you do. So no matter what you think you're doing, if you start hesitating, it's going to cause you hassle, headaches, and trouble down the line. Opportunities don't wait. So when you're looking at delaying potentially now, it's not that you shouldn't step away and keep looking, but if you've hesitated and lost and regretted it, you could have lost 5 to 10% of your bidding power, because the next property that comes up is going to end up starting at a higher price point than that. Price creep, that happens as part of the process as well. And then when it comes to indecision, signaling that weakness to sellers and agents, like I said, it's something that you really want to be clear on who's helping you and how they're going to help you. And then the perfect deal doesn't exist. In reality, life is what happens when you're busy making plans. You do the best with the information you have to hand, and you can't beat yourself up after the fact. Some people make great decisions in the long run, other people don't. But when you're buying a property for yourself to live in, it's not like Warren Buffett. It's not a yield or a return over a specific lifetime. You have to factor in lifestyle, rental, all the other things in the middle. So to summarize very quickly, what I want you to do is I want you to be clear about how you're going to engage and why, who's going to do it. So if you're a couple or if you're a team, who's going to be the one that communicates? Don't go between the two. Don't dabble in each of you sending off communication, because that signals a kind of a broken mixed message between two people that are meant to be aligned. Get clear on what you want, keep decisive, and just, whoa, 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 look at that. And just to finish off, just jump, get in or get out, and get on with it. Join me next time when I discuss another topic, just the one, and I hope you find it interesting.